Hey, U.S. wineries, it's Ann Reynolds, owner of Wine Compliance Alliance here in Napa, California. And are you somebody who works at a winery that is responsible for managing your winery's TTB label approvals? So this video is for you, or if you are a winery staff or somebody who is just generally interested in learning some more about TTB wine label compliance. I was pleasantly surprised to see a couple of days ago that the TTB has finally resurrected a document that I actually used to use as one of the textbooks when I was teaching winery compliance at Napa Valley College. And that is what you see on my screen here. They call it the Beverage Alcohol Manual, or BAM. This one is for wine. And for many years, it had just disappeared. They had taken it off their website. You couldn't find it unless you could kind of dig it up from the Internet Archives. But they've brought it back. It's now on their website. If you just do a Google search for just like this, TTB Beverage Alcohol Manual, dash wine, you're going to come to this page. And why is this useful to you if you submit TTB label approvals? This guy is going to tell you all the information that you need to know as far as items that are required to be on any wine label submitted to the TTB for label approval. It's going to tell you that. It's going to give you the more specific definitions and or requirements, such as font size, which label they're required to be on, if they're required to be on your front label, which is what the TTB calls your brand label, by the way, or if they can be on, quote unquote, any label. So you could put them on either on the front label or on the back. It's going to tell you information about that. It's going to explain things such as class and type, which, by the way, for most of us, for most of you, I should say, is probably going to mean a varietal name, class and type. But here it is. This is a very helpful document to have in your files that you could download and save as a PDF file on your computer, and then just refer to it as you're going through and preparing a label that you're about to submit for TTB approval. This has everything in it to provide guidance as far as the percentage requirements. For example, in the name and address section, here is where you're going to see the explanation of all of these guys here, which all of these, by the way, are they are actually optional, the optional statements. But as this is titled, this is what is the TTB calls the name and address statement on a wine label. We're most used to seeing this on a back label for a wine. Most commonly, we're used to seeing the one right here, this produced by. So on the label, it will say produced and bottled by my winery, comma, Napa, California, for example. Here is a summary that explains what are the qualifiers behind using all of these different optional phrases in that name and address statement, which, like I said, is a required item on any wine label. So that's just one of the chapters. So I wanted to point this out to all of you if you have any need or any desire to learn about TTB wine label requirements. This BAM manual is very helpful for that. It's very well laid out with those helpful graphs and I think, pretty clear summaries of what the different definition requirements are as they relate to minimum percentages or they don't. And by the way, that these same topics that are covered in the BAM manual are exactly what I wrote about, essentially all of them, in my book. If you're not familiar with this, The Inside Story of a Wine Label. I wrote this book about 6 years ago, and I wrote this because I would often read either in a magazine article or on any number of website posts explaining different items on wine labels, explaining if we put a varietal on a label, or explaining when you see an appellation, such as Napa Valley on a label, or a vintage, all these common items that we're used to seeing. And I would read these articles or posts, and fairly often I would see that either they were flat out incorrect in how they explained it, or they were only partially accurate. And that would just frustrate me again and again and again, because my background, again, if you've been following me for a while, I worked at many wineries going back to the early 1990s. And so along the way, I was managing winery compliance at several sites, which meant that when it came to designing a wine label, I was directly involved because I was providing guidance to the winemaking team, the winemaker, cellar masters, whoever was involved in designing a wine label, and that I would be providing them guidance specific to these very topics. What were what items did their wine qualify for as far as the varietal, the vintage, and the appellation, for example, alcohol content, all of that stuff. That is all regulated by the TTB, and that's what caused me to write this book, based on those many, many years of firsthand experience where I knew exactly, I understood not just the winemaking world and was the person responsible for tracking all their details in our database software, which told us the exact blend percents, which I then was able to provide to the winemaking staff the guidance on this is exactly what this wine blend qualifies for to put or not put on its label based on TTB regulations from my years of looking at something like this guy, the BAM manual. So that's where the book came from, by the way, which is available on Amazon, FYI, in case anybody is interested. So this is, like I said, I wrote this about 6 years ago. It's a great, it's only a little over 70 pages long, and so it's a quick read. Just really get straight to the point as far as what are the requirements behind all of these items that we're used to seeing, we're used to using on wine labels. So there's that as another resource for all of you U.S. wineries. And yeah, if you do pick it up on Amazon and it is interesting or helpful to you, I would definitely, of course, appreciate a review. But that's my FYI for you, all of you today, is again, the TTB has resurrected this beverage alcohol manual specific to our world, specific to wine. And this is definitely very helpful to any of you who are involved in TTB label approvals or COLAs submissions, or if you're just somebody, winery staff or wine industry person who has an interest in wine labels. Here's all the TTB's information behind their labeling requirements in a pretty well organized and I think not too government-y speak language. So fairly user-friendly is how I'm going to put it. But again, also my book is out there too, The Inside Story of a Wine Label. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.